Now, when it comes to disturbing movies, some of the films that I always see mentioned when I see discussions or hear about people talking about them, some of the big films I hear come up are films under the new French extremity. Stuff like Inside, or Frontières, or Eels, or High Tension, all of which are very good films. The one I always see come up, without a doubt, it will always show up, is Martyrs by Pascal Longuier, directed by Pascal Longuier, from 2008. Now, Pascal Longuier, he's an interesting guy. The film was obviously heavily inspired by not by Eraserhead, but Hellraiser. And it was a very dark, nihilistic, gross, I don't want to say disturbing, but definitely very unsettling and violent, stomach-churning, and somehow, towards the end, meaningful experience. If I were to describe it in any way, it's torture porn with a meaning. And honestly, I think that's the closest I can get to describing it without giving any plot details. But Martyrs is a very depressing, down-note film. And as soon as I heard that they were making an American remake, I was heartbroken. Like, there are some films you just can't remake. There's some foreign films you just cannot remake in the US and do the original any justice at all. I mean, if you want a good example, look at The Ring. Look at The Grudge. Look at the American remake of Old Boy. Look at just look at really any US remake of a good foreign film. Look at Let Me In. Let Me In sucked ass. The original, however, was good. There are just some films, and when I say some, I mean just about all of them, that you cannot remake and do it justice. Now, while I will admit that I do enjoy the US remake of the film Dark Water, while I don't like The Ring that much, I still enjoy it. I still, can watch it every few years or so, and I can understand why people like it. But still, there's no real point to remaking these films. Just release them with English dubs on them in the U.S., and I'm sure that they will contain the same scares and do just fine. Now, if it wasn't obvious by this talk of remakes, tonight I'm going to cover the U.S. remake of Martyrs from 2015. And I'll be honest, when I first heard, while I was heartbroken, I decided I'll give it a chance. I'll be open-minded about it. Then I saw the trailer, and then I read some early reviews from the film, and what I've gotten out of hearing all this, and please note, I'm recording this before I even watched the movie. What I've gotten out of all of this is it's basically a less surreal, less meaningful, less hopeless version of the original film in English. And you can tell just by the trailer. The trailer alone tells you that this film did not understand what the first one was trying to say, especially with its ending. In this one, with the trailer, it just looks like torture porn with religious themes, when that doesn't really represent what Martyrs is supposed to. I told myself I wouldn't see this, but I figured it would be good material for a review, and I may as well try and give it a chance, although I already get a feeling that I'm not going to enjoy this very much. So, basically, at least from what I've heard, this film is a shot-for-shot, in English, less violent, less surreal, and less hopeless, and less meaningful remake of the original film, which is great. So, I'm just going to try to stay as open-minded as possible and just watch this pile of something. I don't know if it's going to be pile of gold or pile of garbage, but all I know is it's the same plot as the first film, which a girl who was kidnapped when she was younger and tortured goes to get revenge on the people that did it to her, and her friend who she met at an orphanage helps her. And that's the basic plot. So let's just do this before I end up, I don't know, fucking killing somebody. So the film opens up with the same opening as the original film. It's just not unsettling at all. Maybe it has to do with the fact that the camera work looks like it was shot by a spastic monkey with emotional issues, or maybe it's the fact that I've seen it before, probably the first one. But it doesn't. But this camera work does not help portray the emotion and impact that the original opening had. And then we get to Lucy and Anna meeting each other in the orphanage or whatever. And while we do actually see them more as kids, unlike in the original, it still doesn't do much for me. And although the opening scare is still there, the film still feels the need to add in a bunch of, like, needlessly add in a bunch of religious symbols and crosses, and they decide to throw in just fucking nuns and crosses all over the place, so that way they can have some kind of connection to the original the film's theme of, like, religion and stuff like that. And that's really all I could type, because I was getting just, like, more and more pissed off by the minute while watching this film. The acting in the film, honest, isn't too bad. It still does not change the fact that the English dubbed version of the original film is a far better film in almost every aspect. And the writing in this film, subpar at best. Camera work is half the time it's terrible, half the time it's okay. Also, something I gotta really talk about is, you remember the opening, well, if you haven't seen Martyrs, I mean, this isn't a spoiler or anything, but you remember the opening scene in Martyrs where Lucy and, in the original Martyrs, where Lucy and Anna are in the room, and then they get in bed together, and then you see the closet open, and then there's this just, like, creepy fucking silhouette of some, like, horribly disfigured person at the foot of the bed. And remember how creepy that was? Now imagine that, but they replace it with a really, really unscary looking CGI monster, which I will be looping constantly in this corner between pictures and video. So the film is well made overall, I'll be honest. I can't say the film isn't well made, I'll give them that. But it doesn't hold a candle compared to the original, which was creepy and heartbreaking and depressing and so down-note and upsetting. And it just doesn't work. Even as a shot-for-shot remake, it doesn't work. Now, when I say shot-for-shot, I mean, like, there's very similar things. Like, characters are wearing basically the same clothes that they were wearing in the original film. And there's some similar dialogue, and there's very similarly shot scenes. It's just none of them impact the way the scenes in the original film did. And I gotta say, for a shot-for-shot remake, it's still bad. Like, I enjoyed Carrie as a shot-for-shot remake. You know, at least it tried something a little different. Here, the things it tries differently are things that they did basically because, oh, Americans can't handle depressing movies. Oh, Americans don't like down-note horror films with endings that are depressing. So we gotta make it happy and change fucking settings from a gloomy French countryside to a sunny fucking, like, middle of America in the middle of nowhere. Maybe even California house in the middle of nowhere. I hope that made a bit of sense. They basically changed the setting from a gloomy, foreboding, yet at the same time very beautiful French countryside to California, basically, and it ruins it. It ruins the entire setting. While it does kind of give the, oh, things aren't as always as they appear, it still ruins it. Alright. And one of the other big reasons I don't like this film is because it's not just because they don't try anything different that would work. It's also because they completely miss the point of the original film. Now, when I'm done with fucking, like, ratings and everything, I will get into the point of the original film, or at least what I kind of got out of it, and other things that involve spoilers with this film and the original. And so I'm just gonna not. I'm just gonna wait till I finish my review. Oh, completely. I got a few more things I got to throw in. The characters completely worthless, even though they are basically the same characters in the original. I just don't like them as much. Maybe it's the fact that I'm already biased against this film going in, based on just because I watched the trailer, or based because I don't like remakes of good movies. But it just, the characters are worthless. The gore is okay. The pacing is subpar, and this is coming from a film that is a shot-for-shot remake of the original, which had great pacing and atmosphere. This one doesn't really have much. It's a dumbed-down version of the film that isn't really worth anybody's time. I don't care if you don't like watching films with subtitles. Then just watch the dubbed version of the original Martyrs, because it is a far better film, even though the voice acting isn't as good. On the gore meter from 1 to 10, 1 being something like Nosferatu and 10 being something like Brain Dead, the US remake of Martyrs is probably a 5 or 6, which is weird because honestly, I would rate the original at like a 5, maybe a 4.5, because the original isn't gory. The original is violent and visceral and dirty and grimy, while this one just decides, hey, let's throw in, some burning people at the stake here, and some removing a couple pieces of skin here, and some drills here, and some fucking electroshock therapy here, and call it a film. So, overall, like I said, if you absolutely have to watch Martyrs and you hate subtitled films, then just watch the English dub of the film, because it's really not worth your time. I will still give this film like a 1 or maybe half of a star out of 5, basically because it at least tries, but it's still easily one of the worst US remakes ever. Now that I've gotten that little review out of the way, I'm going to get into some of the things that involve spoilers with the original film, which I highly suggest you see, and spoilers with this film, which I highly suggest you don't see. So if you don't want either of these films spoiled for you, you may as well just stop watching now. I'm going to give you a few seconds. Alright, I think we're good. Um, Now, what I got out of the original film was basically, it's been a while since I watched it, but at least from what I can remember from my interpretation of it, basically, what happens that makes it so depressing is one of the main characters, Anna, commits suicide halfway through the film. It is a scene that is extremely unexpected and shocking, and it really hits you, honestly. Like, it really, like I wouldn't say I almost cried, but it's definitely a very depressing, down note scene. Now, in this film, they decide, okay, Americans can't handle things involving emotions, so let's make it to where Lucy doesn't commit suicide, and she lives for the rest of the movie. You kind of see the problem here. I'm not saying it's absolutely necessary that Lucy dies, but if it was a central plot point in the original film and you're trying to make an exact remake, you gotta stick with shit like that. Alright, another thing. In the original film, after Lucy commits suicide, there, Anna finds the secret torture room in the fucking basement of the house, and there's a girl down there who is horribly disfigured and mangled, and she tries to save this girl, but this girl ultimately ends up trying to kill herself and then ends up getting killed. Again, the fact that this girl is horribly disfigured and obviously does not want to live anymore after what she has been through, and even if she could, get medical attention and try to get back to normal, she couldn't do it because she's so deformed, and so, I don't want to say she's hideous, but she kind of is. That there's no real point in living anyway. Alright, that's depressing. Depressing as fuck. In this film, they decide, hey, how about we make the disfigured girl not tortured or disfigured at all, and just a girl that was down there. who doesn't have any cuts, bruises, her clothes are clean, and overall she looks like she looks like a decently, clean little girl, and that's what they do. This time they decide to have like 4 girls down there being tortured, and all 4 of those girls combined do not equal the amount of just fucking horrific, down note, depressedness. I use that word, depressedness. It's a word now. That the one girl in the basement in the original film has. Another thing, they decided to go completely overboard with this film and make it to where they're trying to prove that there's an afterlife according to, Christian or Catholic standards. And yeah, in the original, they didn't throw around religious symbols and nuns just randomly to be like, oh, it's Christian, because honestly, as far as I can remember, the original Martyrs didn't have any religious symbolism at all. Another big problem I have is, like I said, Lucy survives until the end of the film. Now, while in the original Lucy dies, and then Anna takes her place as the martyr, and then Anna ends up getting tortured and killed, and leaving basically the main characters dead, and you feeling empty and fucking dead inside. This one doesn't do that. It decides, hey, let's just have Lucy, the one who was already tortured, get tortured more, and then get skinned like Anna did at the end of the original, except this time we're just going to take a little bit of skin off her back and then put her on a cross and not even crucify her to it and just leave her there. Because I guess that's torture. I don't fucking know. But in the original, how they tortured them, they would just basically go in there, beat them for a little bit, and then leave them there. And that was it. And that is disgusting and visceral and gritty and grimy and just, I don't know. I feel like getting the shit beaten out of you would hurt a bit more than just taking like a fucking power drill to maybe like the arm or something. I feel like that would hurt a lot more. Or that would hurt a lot more than getting electroshock therapy, because honestly, I've been electrocuted before, and it's not pleasant, but it's not horrible. It's not like something I would rather experience instead of being stabbed. Again, I haven't been stabbed before, but I'm sure it's a bit more bearable than being stabbed. What I'm trying to get across here is they're doing the whole kind of torture side of things completely wrong compared to what they did in the original. The original I would call a violent, visceral, grimy film, while the remake I would just call a needlessly gory film, because there's just so much blood splatter and gore in this film that it loses its traction with the whole serious kind of tone, honestly. Another big problem I got is that they decide to still kind of hold on to the original ending, which my interpretation of the ending, people can have different versions, but honestly, I thought the ending of the original film was that Anna becomes a martyr, she sees, if there's anything in the afterlife, and she tells the leader of this, like, cult or whatever, that's obviously inspired by Hellraiser, she tells them that they are, at least what I think is, she tells this lady that her entire life's work has been for nothing because there is no afterlife. And then the lady commits suicide and the movie ends. And that is just like an ultimate down note to this film. You know what happens at the end of at the end of the remake? At the end of the remake, Anna somehow escapes and tries to save Lucy. And then Lucy tells Anna what's in the afterlife. And then the priest who's there hears it, commits suicide, and then Anna shoots the leader after she asks what Lucy said, and then Lucy dies, and then Anna dies, even though Anna was maybe stabbed, like once. Not enough to where she would die that quickly. Again, you see my problems here it's not as emotionally impactful and just depressing as the original was. And I can understand if you want to make this film for a mainstream audience, but if you're going to make a shot-for-shot remake of a really depressing film, then you better keep a lot of the major plot points there, and you better keep the major scenes there. That is probably why this is easily one of the worst fucking US remakes of a great foreign film that I've ever seen. Honestly, I don't know how I actually sat through this film, because every second it just threw things at you that were not in this, that aren't in the spirit or in the kind of vein of the original at all. And I'll give them that they at least tried something different, but they tried something different so that way more people would see it and less people would get depressed about it. I mean, come on, in the US we got the alternate ending for Army of Darkness because they thought the original ending was depressing. It was too depressing. Like, think about that for a second. Alright, we got fucked on this remake. Big time. There's nothing that can change my mind about this. And to the directors of this film, the Gotez brothers or whatever the fuck their names are, you two should be extremely ashamed of yourselves for not only, basically doing an exact remake and not trying anything different that would be for artistic purposes or for another purpose other than to make money. First of all, that. You guys should be ashamed for that. And you guys should also be ashamed to think that this film needed a fucking US remake. Honestly, this film would never needs a remake. And I'm happy that people are... That this is one of those remakes that people are like, yeah, we don't need this. Like, even US horror fans. There are even horror fans out there who hate the original, who, after seeing the remake, think that the original at least is good. Because if you hated the original Martyrs, I urge you, I 100% urge you to go out and watch this remake. I'm not saying that so the directors could get more money, because they don't deserve it, because they obviously don't have the creative skills for this kind of thing. But I'm saying go out and watch it, and come back to me, because I know that most of the people who hated who hate the original Martyrs, if they end up watching this remake, they will most likely end up saying, yeah, I was kind of wrong about the original. At least it's not the shitty remake. I think that's it for now. I've ranted for over 20 minutes, and I really need to just chill out now after getting all that out of my system. Anyway, guys, if you made it this far, you guys, troopers. But you have a good one. Peace.